Can Florida pull off one of the biggest upsets in recent memory this weekend? We are going to take a look at exactly what UF needs to do to find a way to win against the number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's talk about the path and how UF could potentially have success against Georgia. First, I want to talk about Georgia's weaknesses, which they have this season, and I don't know that they did last year. UGA has had a lot of really slow starts this season, and I know so has Florida. But if the Gators are able to build on their offensive momentum from that South Carolina game, then I think they have a chance to put the Dogs in a bad spot early. That South Carolina game was big for Florida, not because it was beautiful, not because they crushed them, not because everything went perfectly, but because they did find some offensive success. They never gave up. They did some things that we haven't seen them do yet this season. If they can continue to do those things, that is really going to help. And listen, Georgia's defense, it's still good. Not saying it's not, but it is definitely not as dominant as it's been in years past. Certainly not as dominant as it was last year. And much like Florida, their defensive line has not been able to consistently generate pressure. That is something we have talked about on this channel so much. The Gators have not done a great job getting sacks, getting hurries, creating plays that then down the line turn into turnovers or other things. It all stems from lack of pressure on the quarterback. Georgia has the exact same issue. In fact, Florida and Georgia are last and second to last, respectively, in sacks this season. So even though it's definitely a category where the Gators have struggled, Georgia doesn't really seem to have an edge here at all in this category because they struggle too. So if that's something that UF can take advantage of, it would bode well for the Gators. So what's the path? Is there a path to victory for the Gators over the Bulldogs? Honestly, I think there is. Now, before I get into the path, I do want to say, I'm not saying this is overly likely, but what I am saying is if the Gators do these things, if they play at the top of their game, Georgia is absolutely 100% beatable by this Florida team. So let's look at the Gators defense versus Georgia's offense. The Gators defense has their work cut out for them this week. Georgia is number 2 in points per game, number 2 in pass yards per game, and number 5 in rushing yards per game in the SEC. However, what I think the story of the game here is Brock Bowers. He's out for the rest of the season. He's got an ankle injury that he suffered against Vanderbilt, and he will not be playing for the Georgia Bulldogs. I think that Bowers may have been the best player in college football this season. He was honestly a legitimate Heisman contender while playing tight end. When is the last time that has happened? Does anybody remember? He was the focal point of Georgia's offense, and he was making impact plays both in the running game and the pass game. And outside of him, Georgia doesn't have a receiver with over 350 yards. We're going to have to see how Carson Beck plays when he's missing his number 1 target, right? His overall go-to guy. And something that I think some people are missing, I've gotten comments on videos when we've talked about Bowers being out, and the comments are Georgia's loaded with weapons offensively. And that's true. That's a true statement. However, Carson Beck still very green, and I do think that Bowers is like a security blanket to him. So yes, you have other targets on the field. You have other top talent, but if you're not comfortable going to those guys, there is going to be a learning curve with it, and that's where I think Florida can take advantage. Georgia, using all of their other receivers, is going to look different 3 and 4 weeks down the road than they are going to look the first week without Bowers. And that's something UF should and could be able to capitalize on. And Georgia's not going to be able to do a whole lot about it. So let's talk about the Gators offense versus Georgia's defense. Even if they're not what they've been the last couple of years, Georgia is still a very good run defense. In fact, they've given up the fewest yards per game in the entire conference. And given our inconsistency on the ground this year, I am not particularly optimistic that we can get the running game going. I would love to be wrong about that, but in the past, this would kind of be a death sentence for a Billy Napier offense. But that South Carolina game that I talked about at the beginning of this video, we know that we have the ability to make the throws to win games. This opens up an entirely huge, brand new world of possibilities. If we win this game, that probably means that we had the same type of offensive success that we did against the Gamecocks. Lots of passing downfield and, running the ball enough to keep Georgia's defense honest. In recent years, beating Georgia has required elite quarterback play. It's taken the likes of, Joe Burrow, Mac Brown, Kyle Trask, Bryce Young, and not only those top guys, but those top guys playing some of the best games of their career. So obviously those are incredibly lofty expectations for Graham Mertz to have to live up to. Can he pull it off? Mertz probably had his best game of his career last week, and he is going to have to play just as good, if not better, if the Gators are going to walk out of Jacksonville with that W. So obviously the odds are not in our favor. Florida has never won a game against a top 5 opponent when they were a 2-touchdown dog. And there is a reason why the Bulldogs are favored by 2 touchdowns. However, upsets happen all the time in college football. And there is definitely a realistic path to victory here. So if Florida wins, then what? We're in the driver's seat for the SEC East race. With so much on the line, we know our guys are going to show up. They're going to play hard. They are going to give us a shot to pull out the victory. All right, guys, game week, it's almost time. Kickoff is tomorrow. Florida, Georgia, not only one of the Gators' biggest rivals, but one of the best and most fun, most festive games of the year. I have been to so many Florida, Georgia games. I have so many favorite memories. I think one I can think of is that Eric ran a fake punt for 20 yards against Georgia. I want to say it was in 2006. Urban Meyer referred to it as the slowest 20 yards in college football. I'm pretty sure Eric's still bitter about that almost 20 years later. Another favorite is when Chaz Henry had to go in to kick a game-winning field goal. Obviously, Chaz Henry, our punter, not our field goal kicker, but he was called upon to do this because of an injury. And my disdain for Todd Grantham stems from this game. He was the Georgia defensive coordinator. And as Chaz is running out there to play a position that is not his, we had Grantham on the sideline doing the throat chop towards Chaz. Totally classless. Chaz goes out there, hits the game-winning field goal. Pretty sure he had some choice words for Grantham on his way back off the field, but 2 memories that just are ingrained in my mind. I'll never forget them. This is one of the best games of the year. Have you been to Florida, Georgia? What's your favorite Florida, Georgia memory, whether it's a big win or a cool play? Let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what players you really think could be a difference maker. If Florida wins, it's because this person had a massive game. Let's talk about it. This game is big. And while Florida is the underdog, they're not out of it. There is absolutely a chance. Crazy things happen every single week in college football. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Smash the subscribe button right this second. We've got lots more content coming your way. If the Gators win, we will see you live. If not, we will be wrapping it all up on Sunday morning. You don't want to miss it. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Go Gators, guys.